Welcome everyone to Lative's webinar. My name is Stephanie Martin and I'm here with my coworker Adrian. We're going to go through today how you can shift from an annual planning cycle to a more agile and dynamic planning cadence. So let's get started with just a couple of introductions about us, and we'll kick it off from there. Adrian.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Del Bonta. I am on the very, very west side of the US. I've been in some kind of go-to-marketing ops role for more than a couple of decades. Um, I usually work with growth stage companies, so I'm building out RevOps teams, building out global teams. And the last company I worked for, I needed help with sales planning, and I found this tool called Lative, and I liked it so much that here I am.
Thanks. And my name's Stephanie Martin. I have also been in revenue operations and sales operations roles for the better part of the last 20 years or so. I've worked in cybersecurity companies and also enterprise software companies of various sizes and stages of growth. So I've seen a lot of planning cycles. I've led a lot of planning cycles, and I know how hard it is, but also how important of a function it is for all these companies. So a big focus of my work is really working with people on, making this shift from annual to agile. And I'm also here at Lative because I really believe in the innovation that's happening in this space, and how it can really transform our capabilities in revenue operations and planning and strategy as a whole. So as we're getting started, we thought we would start off with a poll just to kind of get to know everybody who is here joining us today. So we're going to run a couple of polls just to get to know you a little bit. And the first one I'm going to launch here is just kind of tell us a little bit about, your planning cycle, your planning resources. Like, how's it going? For myself, I oftentimes found myself as a team of one doing all of this. Other times I had a few people that were in supporting roles, or once I even had someone dedicated to planning and compensation. So, but this varies among teams. So we just kind of wanted to get to know how your teams are resourced. And so far, it looks like we've got people with a little bit of a team here, so that's great. That's great. Some have 2, some have 3 to 5. That's awesome. No one going it alone, so that's good. All right, and then let's see. We've got another question for you, which is a little bit more about how you would describe the maturity of your planning capabilities right now, and how that goes. So are you just getting started learning about this? Is that why you're here today? Or are you you've done it a few times and you're just wanting to brush up your skills? Or, are you even on the more advanced end where you've done this a lot in a very manual way, and now you're looking for some ideas on how to do it in a more automated way? So it looks like most people are just getting started here. So that's good. Some people are just developing. That's great. So great. Well, we will definitely give you some really practical advice to take away today. So, and that. All right, well, let's get into it then. What we want to kind of start with is lay of the land here. When we're talking about go-to-market sales planning, what does that entail? I will just start by saying that, and I think we all know this, is that it's a lot. It is a lot of work, and it is a lot of detail, and can oftentimes be rather complicated and complex, because there's a lot of interconnected components here. At the basis of it is really productivity. And so there's a ton of analysis and research that has to go into how is the company currently performing? What does that look like? What is current productivity trends? How efficient is the team running? what is the average ramp times, and how do people, produce over time throughout their tenure. Um, and not only that, a huge piece of it too is the pipeline trend of it. How much pipeline is generated on a regular basis, from how many leads, and what is the conversion rates. So getting these baselines and understanding kind of the current productivity and how the team performs is a huge piece of your planning cycle. We all know this. Um, from there, you can then start your planning process and get into, modeling what a plan could look like, taking some top-down information from finance or leadership and taking that and creating some models there. Understanding some assumptions like attrition and seasonality, what the business patterns are, factoring all that into your model, factoring in the ramp schedules, factoring in a proposed headcount plan, et cetera, and how you're going to set up your organization. This is all what goes into the planning itself. And then from there, of course, it's the quota distribution and understanding how you're going to deploy quotas and by how much, and for what products, and how you're going to divide up the quotas. A huge piece of go-to-market planning and decision intelligence is really about the how's it going question, the execution of it. And this is where I think it gets really tricky, is that, reflecting back on my own experience here, I'd launch a plan, let's say the beginning of a fiscal year in January or February, whatever the case may be. And then I got super busy. I had a lot going on at any given time. And so I wasn't always just looking and tracking every day of how I was tracking to plan with everything, how my quota was going, how the productivity was tracking, if I was seeing any gaps anywhere. But this is a really important piece of really highly, elite go-to-market planning is constantly watching the execution. And not only that, what would often happen to me is after I launched a plan and things were going, according to plan and things were going well, I'd have to make some changes. Like something would happen and all of a sudden it was like, oh, we need to, either freeze hiring, or maybe we just got some funding, so we need to maybe expand a little bit more. And so then I was back to the drawing board of figuring out, what could that look like, and how can we adjust? For myself as a team of one, or even with a small team, like this is a lot. And by the way, let's face it, this is just one piece of a RevOps job, right? This is just one of the, many hundreds of things that we're kind of juggling at a given time.
And Steph,
Yeah,
with all those pillars that we're responsible for, maybe this is not a strong suit. Maybe the analytics is not what we're great at. Maybe we're better at process, or maybe we're better at systems, but we're still responsible for it.
yeah, exactly right. Um, and, there's like, I think I've kind of alluded to this already, but, within all that planning, you've got really two motions. Like on one hand, you're collecting baselines and you're putting together a plan. And then as you're executing it, you're really creating baselines that then feed into the next year plan. So it's planning and executing simultaneously. And at least what I've seen, there hasn't really been a great way to bring the two together. You'll have a plan, maybe in spreadsheets. You'll have a BI tool, or CRM or whatever that's churning out some reports on how things are going, but they're not connected with each other. And this is, I think, the huge opportunity for some technology innovation to come into play to really accelerate our capabilities in this area. And just as an example, one of the roles that I had a few years back, I had just landed in the role and was getting acquainted with the company. And they were asking me to put a plan together, and I needed to first, collect all the information from finance. Like, what are you expecting? What are the numbers that you've laid out for me? how did you arrive at these numbers? Is this a growth assumption? Is this, expansion? What went into this? And then I had to do then that bottoms up kind of aggregation of like looking at our productivity, looking at ramp times, understanding what the current team was doing in order to then put together a comparison of what that top-down plan looked like against the reality of how their team was performing. And I found a huge gap there. And that led to some pretty tough conversations to be able to explain that. And by the way, it took me weeks because I was doing this all in spreadsheets and kind of piecing together data that was, all over the place. And it took quite a while to get this. At the end of the day, I ended up negotiating a lower target because I showed how, very factually how the team that they had in place and the hiring that they planned to do was just simply not enough to get us to where it needed to be. So we lowered the target a little bit because they weren't going to invest in more headcount. And so, then we got into some other discussions about what we were going to do going forward, but we'll get into more about that a little bit later. So Adrian and I've been through it. We have been through many cycles, and we just want to be honest that, like, sometimes this is how we got it done. We were working, through lunch. We were in a room together with, the stakeholders, and we were whiteboarding stuff.
We could have made
And
an entire collage of whiteboards
we
with
could, yeah, that we
teeny
were
tiny
going,
scroll.
we were going through our photos, and there were a lot of these. But this is hard stuff, and it's hard because there's so much involved in this, and I think we're stating the obvious, but it's a ton of work to pull anything together regarding your annual plan because data is scattered and it's incomplete, or it doesn't exist sometimes.
Or it's not
You're
up to date. It's wrong.
Yeah,
It's not reflective of the business now.
right, exactly. Um, let's face it, you're already inundated with a heavy workload. I've never personally been in a role where I haven't been stretched pretty thin, and my whole team has been stretched pretty thin. I think it kind of goes with the territory, and so balancing everything can be really hard. And I just feel that the tools that we have or had to use at our disposal are pretty outdated and lack sophistication. Like I couldn't whip up spreadsheets that had enough sophistication that I needed, um, due to all the things I just mentioned. It was really hard to do that. And so that's why I'm, such a believer in the transformation that I finally feel is happening in this era of AI that we're in. Um, and planning is hard because, it's usually a once a year thing. It's even harder, I would say, for those who are doing it more than once a year. Like if you're doing quarterly planning, then you're, putting even more time into this process, more frequently. But anyway, either way, it could take months of preparation. You're constantly collecting and cleaning all the data, again, reworking spreadsheets, pulling in fresh data, to refresh things. Sometimes you forget how things were built in the first place and you have to redo the whole thing. And so, that's just a huge, I think, time, suck for a lot of people. And so we launched the plan at the beginning of the year. Guess what? Something changes, something goes off track, and then you are also, having to quantify some things that are really hard to quantify. Um, a lot of companies have AI initiatives right now, and then they want proof that those are starting to work. That's another layer of complexity that I think comes in here.
Yeah, there was a planning cycle I went through where I tried to use AI, and frankly, I was a novice, and I'm about to get very vulnerable. I was a novice. I didn't really understand how the tools worked. I just kept hearing about it. I didn't have a lot of extra time. For context, there was some real big stuff going on in life because we're also people. Life is happening. There are also the macro things happening in the world. And I thought it would be like like a Star Trek episode where I would just say, okay, AI, build me my plan. And if you've tried this, you know that it's a great, there are a lot of great tools that will help you, but they don't replace you. They don't understand the nuance of sales planning. They don't understand the context. They don't understand the word. It doesn't understand the words. You have to teach it how to build your model. So basically, you've hired an assistant that you need to train, but I didn't know that. And so the output I got, I also had a new CRO, I had a new CEO, and I didn't have a lot of extra time to be discerning. That was on me, but I went with this plan that was just wrong. It would overhire. We all know what happens if you overhire. It really broke some trust I had with my new boss, and I had to start over and do it again anyway. And I didn't, it put me behind. So I learned my lesson the very hard way.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely relate. It feels like, in this new era of AI, there's an opportunity here to accelerate and make things go faster, but you got to be really careful that the trade-off isn't, introducing more inaccuracy or, outcomes that aren't correct.
Yeah, there was that great article in the New York Times, Stephanie, about AI is great, but don't let it do your taxes. Very similar. The
Exactly.
nuance is missing
Nuance and
currently. We'll see.
interconnectedness of a lot of
Yeah.
complex, yeah, modeling. Um, so so how does this play out? This is something I've seen numerous times where you launch that plan, have all great intentions of it coming to fruition. And, after January, maybe you get a new CRO that changes the strategy, or people are leaving the company. Maybe there's a hiring freeze, or like I said, you've gotten another round of funding, so they're going to expand and hire more people. Um, and regardless, you could end up at the end of the day with a target variance, which could be due to all of these things, including productivity slowing down, ramping not going according to plan, or demand generation not keeping up their end of the bargain. Like if you're not pumping enough into the pipeline for people, that productivity can really dip. These are hard things to kind of surface up as they're happening. We all take time at QBRs and stuff to look over, how the team has performed and that type of thing. But again, you're losing the context of how that's really impacting your ability to execute and hit the plan number.
And it's
And
really lagging. You're looking backwards.
yeah, exactly. So in my mind, having some real-time, view of this stuff happening is really critical to, kind of moving from that annual static planning to that agile planning, because part of the agile planning of it is knowing what to adjust, like, and having the data backing, that those reasons.
It also can move your role in RevOps from reactive to leading and as becoming a strategic partner, right? Because you see you can see things happening way in the future.
Exactly. Super proactive approach. Okay, we've got one more poll because we kind of want to know, like, how do you handle this? What do you do when, things start to go off track? Let me launch this poll here. Um, I've done all these three things. Admittedly, we have started over. We have adjusted on the fly. Um, and other times we've just kind of let it ride and see what happens. But yeah, so it sounds like, I mean, the right answer, of course, is to make adjustments to minimize the variance. It's like, but it's what the question is, what adjustments to make, and sometimes those can be hard to figure out. Yeah, making adjustments. Yeah, that's
I've definitely been in the replanning, especially when there are maybe changes in leadership,
yeah,
changes in strategy, changes in whatever.
yeah. Yeah, so good. Well, everyone's on the same page then. We all know we need to make the adjustments and be realistic. Those can be hard conversations to have, but they're necessary. And it's just really good to have solid data backing it. Okay, so we've told you what a great planning, cycle and planning competency looks like. We've reflected on how hard that is and why, it's not as simple, when people say, oh, you've got to be dynamic and continuous and changing and agile with your planning. The question is how? How do I do that and fit it all into everything that I'm already doing? And really the answer, it's not simple, but the concept is simple, is that you need an infrastructure for this that doesn't exist today in a lot of companies other than in spreadsheets. Again, why I feel like this is a huge area of opportunity for advanced algorithms and a platform with AI capabilities to come in and kind of give you this infrastructure to tie all of these pieces together, to be constantly, pulling fresh data directly from where it lives, like your CRM or like your data warehouse, wherever the data is living right now, just giving you constant performance baselines. How are things going? And then allowing you to kind of use that in a planning context and then checking outputs. So, so when I'm thinking about what a critical infrastructure looks like for go-to-market planning, it definitely combines these kind of four elements, right? First would be the top-down inputs, the stuff that your company is kind of handing you to say, this is what we need you to do. And these are the assumptions that we've kind of baked into this plan. The financial targets, maybe expected quotas that they want people to be given based on unit economics and things like that. The seasonality of the business. These are the headcount you're going to get. This is the roles that we've put into place at this company and the org design that goes along with it. And so you kind of take all that top down and you marry that with the bottoms up input of that. Okay, well, let me take your assumptions and let me take your framework and let me, model this out and see what this is going to look like. So then I can use this infrastructure to provide productive capacity around, the number of people that are going to be here, how long it's taking them to ramp, or how long we expect them to take to ramp. Those can be two different things. The attrition that factors in. We can look at efficiency of the team and the revenue they're bringing in, the costs associated with them, and the overall, headcount plan that will be in there. And then we can really talk about the initiatives that are going to kind of go along with this, because once you compare top down with bottom up, a lot of times there's a variance that's very clear when you make that initial comparison. And then it's, okay, what do we do about those issues? At the root of all of this, though, are all these baselines that you need to be kind of bringing in. And this is why the spreadsheet thing is so hard, because first you have to do all this baselining stuff and you got to pull data and you got to create models and understand your productivity and the headcount and everything, and the efficiency of how things are performing. On top of that, all the leads and opportunities that are flowing in and converting different rates. So bringing that all into the mix is really important. And then at the end of the day, what you want is some outputs that you can use, right? How's it going to go? What is my capacity going to look like this year? Do I have enough people? Do I not have enough quota deployed, right? To meet this target? And how is that quota attainment going? Are these even reasonable quotas? That's a whole nother piece of analysis that can be complicated to do. You need to, I think, at all times be aware of, to some degree, the cost of sales and the ROI that this plan produces, and what that's going to have a financial impact on the company. And then also, do we have enough pipeline to hit the target? Because that's a whole other element of it. You could have a great, productive team, but if they're not constantly fed enough pipeline and leads, you might end up, with a productivity shortfall. So I think we can all agree that this is not something that is easily managed in spreadsheets, and it can quickly get overwhelming. And so having this infrastructure essentially what that gives you is a durable planning context window that then you can use AI reliably to help move things along and streamline. Because without understanding all of these different elements and how they go together, I think AI can really get tripped up. And if you're trying to use Claude or ChatGPT to, analyze some spreadsheets or put together some basic models, that's great. But I think
Mhm.
you'll be missing a lot of context and depth that you can get from an infrastructure if you put one into place like this. So that being said, we wanted to leave you all with the how of what this could look like, right? So this is like what you should have. But now it's like, well, what does this look like in practice? And what is Lative offering that can kind of help with this? So I'm going to turn this over to Adrian to kind of show you a couple things. One, how you can, you know, put your infrastructure into place with your plan in it, and then monitor the performance of that, or do that top down, bottoms up comparison. And then secondly, the other piece would be, okay, we see a variance. We know we have to adjust. What would happen if we did this? And so simulating and modeling some scenarios to be able to take to the leadership team and say, these are a couple of options that we could do, and this is what will or will not help. It depends on whatever the case may be. So Adrian, I will turn it over to you at this point to show us a demo.
Okie dokie. Okay, let me just make sure. Ask the usual question. Can you see?
Yeah, good.
Okay. All right. So for this simulation, um, let's just start on the dashboard. I love this dashboard because these are the questions we get asked all the time. This is a really easy way to answer them. So, what are our bookings? Where are we against our target? And what's going on with our quota? In addition, what's our average productivity? What does our capacity through the end of the year model out to be? Where are we against our headcount plan? And what's the cost? And the reason we have this is because, as Stephanie mentioned, we're pulling in your data from whatever sources. It could be multiple, it could be, your data warehouse tool or your CRM or both. Whatever. We're pulling it in, and so you can see it and it's available to you. Quick rundown of what we're looking at. Because we can pull in this data and we set it up for how your business works, we can look at your performance and we can look at how you're targeting, what your targets are and what your quotas are, what that headcount plan, look at it by role and capacity and then execution. And then for productivity, we're looking at what your territories are because we can look at, there are plenty of teams that look at their planning by a consumption model. So, like a book of business or account growth versus ECB and bookings. What the average ramp time, and we'll talk about that in a minute because that is a it's a difficult subject a lot. One of the things that I think many of us have heard is, I don't know where your data comes from. How come your data doesn't match mine? This solves that problem because it's bringing the data together and you're getting everybody to sign off. As Stephanie mentioned, we have conversations with lots of different groups of people, and they're interested in different things. And so Lative can adjust your ability to have those conversations without having to go to yet another spreadsheet or a whole nother talk track. You get to spend time thinking about it rather than messing around with spreadsheets. Okay, so you're in the year, and Stephanie, please jump in whenever you'd like. You're in the year. Now you need to know what's happening with the plan you have. So this is the plan you've built. This is a performance dashboard telling you, okay, well, here's our top-down model, here's our bottoms-up. Most importantly, where are we right now? So our productive capacity, let's say we simulated this for a plan of 44 million and on an annual plan. Our quota is 36, great, that's the quota deployed, but our productive capacity is almost 27 on a target of 44. Uh-oh. Now, you saw everything that's happening in your head that was on that slide that Stephanie showed. This is where you start to go from the spreadsheet exercise of the flat, what's happening, to what can we do about it. This is a nuanced conversation. Productive capacity isn't necessarily we need more salespeople. It could be, are the quotas correct? That's a tricky conversation to have that we've all had. It could be, are the overlay roles correct? Is the ramp time correct? Is the seasonality correct? This brings the conversation from a spreadsheet exercise to nuance and strategic partnership. So what this shows is, from your business point of view, whatever those are, what your quota modeling is, what your target setting is, what your sales productivity is, and what your sales capacity is. You're missing. All right, well, we need to dig in and figure out why. What are the reasons, and what's the information telling us without having to build a whole new model?
I've seen, just to kind of jump in on this, like this is oftentimes the real root cause of why companies miss their target. It's not because a deal slipped in a quarter. It's
Right.
not because, we gave additional discounts on the last day and, we dropped our ACV or whatever. The real reason is because there isn't predictable, durable productivity or capacity in the organization to begin with. And so if you're focusing on a quarterly forecasting cadence, trying to reach that number with deals, I think you're on really shaky ground. And this will give you the insight into how the infrastructure and the org structure and the strategy really of what the company is operating on, how that's going to play out, regardless of the deals. I mean, the deals are icing on the cake, and we all manage that. And we definitely want to forecast them and go through the inspection of them, of course. But this is sort of that layer below that is going to really support those opportunities in the future. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of point that out, because that's one thing that I feel like I struggled with sometimes, was surfacing that level of detail and that level of sophisticated knowledge of what was really going on with regard to the headcount and the productivity piece.
I think you're absolutely right, and I'm going to talk about this in a second. Don't let me forget to come back to the conversations that we can maybe avoid or end quickly because we have access to the analysis. So, um, in looking at productivity, we can see comparisons and we can see what's working and what's not. We can look at what's happening this year, this quarter. That's great. At a high level, your spreadsheets are doing that right now. The next step down is, oh, come on, let me go down. There we go. So that's great. But at a deeper level, what's happening? So we can slice and dice this however you look at your business. Could be ramping, could be regions, could be product. I've set this up for product. So what's happening with our sales? Well, year over year for product A, sales productivity is down, but the opportunities are up. The transactions are down, but the average deal size is up, and the headcount is up. The productivity per AE is down. The, the customer count is up. But based on all of this, what is it telling us? That we might have the wrong headcount assigned to that product. So for me to be able to get here would have been an unbelievable amount of work. Um, what happens that Stephanie alluded to, we get stuck in portions of these conversations without seeing the holistic view, right? So if you're, I don't know, maybe demand gen and pipeline numbers aren't exactly where you want them to be, and there's a whole battle between, are the SDRs doing enough? And is outbound good enough? Okay, great. Yeah. Are the AEs selling enough? Well, I don't know. Are they? Is the ramp time actually correct? I don't know. But what we can start to do is dig into it. So in this simulation, we have this variance. We're not hitting our numbers, and we need a path to do it. So we're going to go over here to, Stephanie, your face is right over this, to a simulator we have. And this allows us to make those guesses without having to go and recreate a model. I don't know if, there have been times when someone would come up to me like a CRO and say, okay, well, we need to hire more people, or what if we sell this new product, or what if? Those are real questions, and you're going to have to answer them. So this allows you to do that without messing around with your model that's live. So let's say we're going to add two people who are selling product B in July or June. There we go. There we go. I was getting ahead of it. What the simulator does is show us how that will affect. Another way to look at it is, okay, we need a productivity lift. How can we do that? We can adjust the simulator for that. Or great news, we're going to start selling this AI product. Go and model that out. We can do that here without affecting our model that's live, our plan that's live. And one of the ways we can then change this, Zoom is really letting me down today. So we can go back into this plan and have version controls. So we can make a copy of this and look at it and compare what's happening. So everything, this is one of the reasons I love this product so much. Everything that I would be trying to do with versions and versions and versions and versions of my model, I can now do without messing around with any of my live data and my live planning. And then you can make adjustments and answer the questions. And instead of spending all your time messing around with Excel or Google Sheets, you can be in conversations with your C-level folks, giving your strategic recommendations for how you're going to hit this gap miss.
Yeah, I think for me, the key takeaway here is getting RevOps out of the business of the nuts and bolts of putting the infrastructure together, but getting the benefit and the insights from an infrastructure that's purpose built for this reason.
Yeah.
I think that's the key piece for me.
When
I
you
feel like that's what's been missing.
Absolutely.
More
When
than
you are working so hard, so much of what we do is reactive. And this helps you move from that position of reactivity to strategic partnership.
yeah. Okay. I'll go back to my slides. Um, okay, so we just showed you an example of where you have, variances to your target from capacity, but also quota. And so I think then this kind of brings us to the next thing of like, okay, you've seen the gap, you know it's there, now what do you do? And these are the strategic conversations that you can start to have because, this is, what we do. We solve problems. So once we know what the problems are and where they are, we can talk about how to best solve them with, leadership, finance, CEO, whatever the case may be. Do we reallocate resources? Do we just move people around to different products or focus them on different things because something's working better than something else? And that would give us a productivity lift or, introducing a new product or something like that. Do we need to focus on ramping? Because this is a huge, area of, revenue leakage and cost. Bringing on new people is expensive. And, if they're not ramping as quickly or as efficiently as they need to be, that can be an area that really needs some focus. And you can have data that backs the need for that. So you can really have financial conversations about where to invest. Does it make sense given maybe a longer term plan, like a year or two out? You're going to have to start hiring now to build that momentum for 1 or 2 years out. You can model that quickly in a system like Lative and, have conversations about the hiring plans. But also, one of the things I struggled with a lot of times was explaining to the talent acquisition people of the impact that they were having on my sales plan. because their inability to source quickly and onboard people quickly was really, impacting my plan, and I needed to be able to show that, and that can be a hard thing to do. But
Absolutely.
anyway, these are things that I think elevate us from a very, reactive and tactical role to something that can be much more strategic in a company. Okay, so takeaways then from all of this. Uh, get yourself an infrastructure, Lative can be one of them. I mean, I'm sure that there are other ways to do this, and everyone might have their own way of doing things, but you need that infrastructure that brings all those things together. And from there, you can be more strategic. You can bring options and solutions instead of just sending out reports and having people try to interpret that themselves. Always be monitoring your plan performance, like knowing exactly how to pinpoint where this plan is off track and where the inefficiencies are, where we can improve, what's working, what's not working. I think that type of insight is going to be super important. And adapt quickly with confidence. And by confidence means, having a very reliable source where this information can be gathered, that you can rely on, and numbers that make sense and are rooted in live data and reality, and move the company forward. We don't have a lot of time. I see companies really struggle with getting some of this information out of their systems, and it can take months to really get a handle on things. And I feel like we just don't have that kind of time. We need
Yeah,
to
I
know
think
right
I
away.
think isn't the time right now, the average time for a new CRO about 18 months?
Yeah. I
So
mean, I've
imagine
even heard
if you,
15 months
yeah,
in some cases. They don't have a lot of time.
right.
So it's
They need
like
to know
if you've
quickly.
got a new CRO, like you need to quickly have some very, pointed conversations about the structure of the organization and how it will perform against this plan. A lot of times, and here's a story that I heard from a CRO who was new in the seat. It was their first CRO job, and they knew that they had been given a target that was not achievable, and they needed to know, like, what do I do? How do I walk this back? And the answer is to show the gap, is to show the bottoms up against the top down, and bring data to the table about
Yeah.
what the cause is, and go from there. And so you can be a real asset to a CRO who might be in that position. And I think a lot of us inherently know that that's the case in a lot of times and a lot of companies, that there's that gap there. And it's, hope is not a strategy. So we gotta be able to expertly bring this information to the table that can help them quickly, pivot and rebuild. And so anyway, I hope this was helpful. I would love to take questions from the audience, if anyone wants to chime in with questions or comments or experiences that they've had regarding any of this. We do have a couple of minutes to take questions. You'd put them in the chat because we've got this as structured as a webinar. So if there are no questions, we can wrap up. I see one. Oh, no, it's our LinkedIn links. Yes, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. And also, if you want more of a deeper dive demo on any of this, we've got a QR code here that will bring you to a place where you can request a demo. We'd love to chat more with you about this and, help you on your journey to becoming more of an agile planner and executor. And thank you for your time, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks. Have a great day.